afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Biblio Fitness. Hope everyone's had a great day, great weekend. I always take advantage of these rest days. But today, I kind of wanted to talk about something that I've talked about before, but where I'm adding beyond good and evil, I guess it's all beginning to make even more sense. He's really, like Nietzsche is really trying, reaching different levels of analysis when it comes to how relativism is what is true. You know what I'm saying? Like how we create these morals and these virtues and these religions to justify our pain or to justify our prejudices, to justify our biases, to justify our resentment. You know, resentment and envy is deified. Is given sainthood, right? Like, you know, how he makes an example of like Jews, for example, how they put themselves as the slaves to be the chosen ones of God, how they inverted values, how they made a religion to justify their existence, right? And that's really, and he talks about how the savage beast in itself has not been eradicated. Like, we constantly say that we are trying to make man more civilized, that we are trying to make man more docile, more amicable with one another, you know what I'm saying? But once you get past the veil, you begin to realize that nothing has changed. It's just people are giving green lights, you know, you're giving a casus belli. You know what I'm saying? Like the savage, the cruelty in man, the cruelty to, and not just inflicted upon others, but inflicted upon oneself, has not dissipated. You know, it still remains alive and thriving. You know, how he talks about how the Spanish would like to see burnings and bullfights, or the Christians and the ecstasy of the man on the cross and stuff like that. Like, there's something about it being nasty that makes it so much more exciting, you know what I'm saying? Like Romans with gladiators, like sacrificing to gods, but there's something cool about it, you know, killing a live animal. There's something like the spice of cruelty is necessary to keep it going. You know, you have to satiate these animal instincts within your ideology. If not, it's going to unleash itself upon you. So, you know, for all this civilization, we're just given rights. Like our instincts are given civic rights. So it just continues to show how ridiculous and unreasonable, like how much of a paradox this really all is. How much it preaches to be one thing and enacts the other. And that just really came to show me with, you know, with the whole concept of good and evil, right? Like, what is good? What is evil? What do you constitute as evil is probably something that is disadvantageous to you, right? Like something that places you at the bottom. Like, you know, how like Christianity, how they have evil as people who are in ways of the world, who follow Satan, who follow greed and have pride and have all these instincts, but without the sanctification of God as ungodly men, as worldly men. The word world itself is a nasty, evil word in the Christian lexicon, right? It means those things. It's synonymous with evil. It's synonymous with seeking pleasure over piety, and to be pious is to be stupid. And it's really amazing how you can really begin to see that. Like, you know, it's a religion that is for the sufferers, is going to want everyone to be equal. And those who are evil, those who are proud, those who want to be individuals, those who want to kind of like not follow the beaten path, like not follow the trodden path, you know, they're sometimes considered narcissistic, right? People who blatantly and openly say that they're for themselves, instead of with this pompous wording and the banners of equality and being first servant in the state. They don't like that. They don't like it when it's out in the open like that, you know, when the game is openly being violated. And you could really see that with, I think, modern days, really, you know, how the concept of good in itself is highly contested, right? What is evil is highly contested. These concepts themselves are constantly interchanging in definition, interchanging in description. There's a variety of different factors in it, but people really don't want to make it seem like all of this is relative, right? Like we have to believe in a truth that we all could get behind. And it's just seen with like the left, for example, or the right, even, this constant fighting for, who's going to be the leader of the ideology, who's the one that's going to take the reins, who's the one that's going to make the rules. At the end of the day, it's never for anybody. It's never for the people. It's always to vindicate yourself. You have these convictions within you that you are somehow born with that are beyond intellectual reasoning. And you're just going to go ahead and find truths and stuff like that are going to further substantiate your claim. You know what I'm saying? That's what we do. But most people don't want to make it seem that way. We try so hard to make it seem like this is a truth that we all could get behind, a morality that we all could get behind, a morality that fits all people, when people themselves are different. Trying to cram everyone into a group leads to untold destruction and pain and death, right? I don't need to go further on that unless you're a complete moron. You should know what I'm talking about. So it's quite interesting how he really does begin to call it for really how it is. Really, like we really have for a very long time trying to run away from our instincts. We have gone to straight reasoning. We have gone to just looking at the physical marvels of the world that we can use for our benefit. No longer trusting our instincts, considering our instincts to be vile and dangerous and stuff like that. That's also the cruelty, right? Like, getting back to that whole concept is not trusting oneself anymore and to constantly be in a state of repentance for one's instincts, be repentance for one's thoughts and one's inclinations. That's self-mutilation, right? That's you're embarrassing yourself. That's self effacement, whatever. But yeah, you're shitting on yourself, really. And that's also cruelty. So it really doesn't, like, religion really hasn't solved anything except be a preservative measure for people in order to make them keep playing the game. It really is that way. It really is a way to dominate, a way to justify yourself as the leaders, as the ones who are going to rule. That's how every religion and philosophy is, right? You're trying to find a way to justify your claim and your superiority over others. Morality and following these virtues or shit like that is a subtle commanding and a subtle obeying, as Nietzsche likes to say. It's very astounding how he really does get to these points. And he begins to even, I've gone into, I've just gotten to believe that these virtues and how relative it is and how much it throws in your face is, I was watching Matrix Reloaded and how the whole Jesus complex, comes into play. For example, how there has to be a savior, this metaphysical figure, this figure beyond understanding, far beyond our understanding, right? Even in the machine world where people are created, these motherfuckers don't know what, you're an anomaly, right? Like, you're something outside of the realms of regular comprehension to man, right? It's just funny, like, how me reading all these things, I'm starting to look at everything from a very different angle. Just seeing how these bullshit truths try to throw in your face of, the victory of all, victory of one is the victory of all. And he talks about how it is a mediocrity of man. Everyone has to just be a good industrial servant of each other, to not think for oneself too much, not strive for too much more, to be happy with one's lot in life. And that's Confucianism, that's Christianity, that's everything, right? It is a power play. It is, that's why I've said so many times before that. That's why a lot of medieval kings turned to Christianity. It wasn't because they saw the truth in the world. It's because, like, damn, this is a religion that I can use as my justification for ruling. Sounds perfect, it really does. You know, it was a justification of feudalism. It's been the justification for a lot of things. So, you know, how can people continue to believe in that? It's just like, you know, it's just trying to believe, trying to dominate, trying to be something else. And he made a very interesting point towards the end of this whole thing, which was about women and the enlightenment and the relationship with them. How women seeking truth is terrible, how it defeminizes and masculinizes them. And it kind of takes them off their actual instincts, you know. It just really shows how this entire striving to escape one's instincts has led to an entire repudiation of nature. We consider ourselves to be these vile creatures, you know, when it comes to global warming, for example, you know, how we talk about how we have caused so much damage and we're so terrible human beings, and how we look at the past with disgust, and the people who created our countries with disgust. We focus on the negative so much, you know. We look at ourselves a very negative light, very gloomy. And to want to get, you know, and just look at our instincts and look at who we are as individuals with you know, revulsion. And this is really this whole world it just really is a definition or a logical conclusion for all of this to work, you know. Like how Nietzsche says, it's really all these people are just following the same path, the same trodden path. That's why there is no ingenuity. This is just a little adaptation, but it's the same thing. It's the rising and rebellion of the masses against those in power. But it's a lot. But this is the natural progression of democracy, right? Now everyone feels that they have a choice. Now everyone has to acquiesce to everyone else's truths, which is completely paradoxical. You can't do that. It's impossible. But no, we have to acquiesce to a certain group of truths because they're the ones in the moral right. We are not. So it's really all the same fucking bullshit. Really, history does repeat itself, as I've said many times, and I'm sure many people are aware of, right? The games don't change because we still follow the same stupid fucking games, and that's why we always lose. And now we have this whole moronic mess, which I feel like it is a natural continuation of what's been going on, right? He really does hone in on that democratic movement, on how the equality of all started taking a really negative effect on everything. And that really does lead to some very interesting questions that one has to resolve, right? Is how does one tackle that? And I've talked about this before, is really us really as a civilization, the whole point of it for the past 2,000 years is trying to rid oneself of one's nature, even though it will never happen, you know. We just find civic rights in our pride to be the chosen ones, our pride to be sons of God, our pride to be these sort of things, our cruelty that we can hurt others, we could go on crusades, we can go and murder and rape people for the name of God, you know, and stuff like that, and watch people get burned at the stake because they didn't believe in our God. You don't feel remorse, you don't feel guilt for acting on your animalistic instincts, you know. So it really all is a coping mechanism, an excuse. These are all causes belli. These are all just mechanisms of facilitating one's enthusiasm for survival. Fuck, man, it's like how fuck, man. It makes so much sense, you know. It makes so much sense that, you know, how he says how you look at where it leads to, and you will realize what they want to, like, what they achieve. Like, what sort of person am I going to be following this thing? And that's why he clowns, you know, stoicism and stuff like that. But he really is amazing how, you know, people create these religions, people create these virtues as a means of survival, as a means to lie to oneself, as a means of a will to lie, a will to deceive. And that's what I've been thinking to myself, and that's what I've been writing, is this is all a lie. And this is a way, and this is a virtue and a morality that is as separated from reality as much, like as humanly possible. And the way that a free will diverges from that is the morality and the virtues and whatever it is, whatever foundations that are made, deal with reality, deal with or accept consciously, hey, what I'm believing is what is beneficial to me. I will never make the assumption, I will never make the claim that it works for anybody else. It has worked for me, and I don't care what anybody else says. And not to lie to oneself and to give oneself suffering justification or to deflect blame onto another person, right? That's what a lot of these religions do. That's what a lot of these current ideologies are, right? Like, we are oppressed by the patriarchy. We are oppressed by our government. We are oppressed by all these things, and that's why we can't move. There is an excuse. There's this devil, and there's ideals and these virtues like, oh, we come together and we voice these concerns that we are for these people, we will get to the top. And it's just pretending, but really just reacting, and it's just really wanting to be the ones to call the shots. But virtues and creating this truth is based on a complete lie to oneself. It's the ultimate antithetical value, right? That this whole thing is built on a lie, this self-deception. And it's really cool because he continues this on in a very interesting manner when he talks about how, this push of this democratic movement for multiplicity, for not tying oneself to one country, to one religion, to one god, to one culture, to one region, whatever. Being this nomad, multinational kind of guy. While it does insinuate, for most people it is going to cause mediocrity, going to cause everyone to complain, not feel pride in oneself, be on so many different places at once that one can't find steady ground, right? You can't find pride in oneself, and you need solid ground in order to progress and become a slave really to the industry, to be a good consumer, to follow the ideal, to be a good little consumer, to keep buying, keep doing all this dumb shit like everybody else, right? That's what this ideal has become, this democratic movement where everyone has a voice, where we're here for all people, we're here for the majority, not the exception. I mean, for the rule, not the exception, right? But in that trend, they can breed another different type of man, that one that takes advantage of the multifacetedness and the multiplicity of the current state of man in a different way, to be a new tyrant, a man that is not tied to moral scruple, not tied to region, and one that can wear many masks, to adapt oneself to many different environments, to not be chained by specific biases, traditional biases, to be able to accept it all. Like, that's the one good thing he says that's come about with all this multiculturalism, is that one has been able to get a deeper view into the labyrinth that is the human condition, to really be able to separate and understand, and that's what he calls the historical sense, is to really be able to look at different philosophies, different religions, different stories, different histories, and really get to see if there's any similarities between the cultures on what they consider important and what they consider to be worth dying for and stuff like that, These are very astute fucking observations, man. It's pretty crazy how, like, I know I say this all the time, it's just fuck, like, it makes sense, but it's like, but I guess he is so great that he makes it seem simple when I would have never thought about it, obviously. It's crazy, man. I hope everyone gets to read this. I really want to, like, obviously I don't want to rush it, but I can't wait to read Twilight of the Gods and then The Prince. It's just really, but like I said, I've said before, understanding how this all works doesn't make it any easier how you are going to do something, right? Like, it's not just critiquing. You can't just critique what's wrong. You have to create something for yourself to be a philosopher. And that's not an easy task to do, right? One must be quite learned. One must be able to observe many cultures and try to see what works, what doesn't work, to be constantly experimenting, to be constantly discovering. Obviously, with some convictions, we all have our innate biases, and that's something that we have to deal with, not try to run away from or excuse or sanctify, but just to take it part of ourselves. And that's why I really began to understand why Nietzsche is so obsessed with the old Greeks, right? Is that we looked at our tragedy, we looked at our flaws with reverence, and that's why the gods themselves had very human characteristics, right? Like it basically sanctifying our nature. Realize that this is a part of us, and we might as well champion it instead of trying to run away from it. But then we became disgruntled and dissatisfied, and then it led to people like Socrates, led to philosophers being skeptical, being like, why is it like this way? And that's how it is with us, right? Like, constant resentment against one's nature, not loving one's nature, not accepting it as a necessary part of one's nature, as what makes you you, but to be something to run away from. And instead of embracing it and to be able to hone it in and to use reason to know when to use your instincts and when not to, right? And obviously it all relies on you. It's all about subjectivity. It's all subjective. It's quite amazing. It's a great groundwork to begin one's philosophy. And that's what I really need to do more. I've been writing, but it's a lot more difficult, man. To create one's ideology, it's not simple. It's not for everybody. And it's not going to be done overnight. But that's why one must continue to read, continue to get inspiration, and continue to learn from the greats. Continue to understand that there are levels to this shit, and Nietzsche is levels above me. So these are all very interesting ways to look at the world and to really begin to see through the perceptions and through the fallacy and through the different levels of curtains. Like there's more than just one curtain. Sorry. Pretty fucking cool. I'm really glad that he is like the one that really calls it for what it is and not tries to justify it. Bullshitting, trying to make it seem like you know better than everybody else and all this other stuff. Like you somehow know the truth more than anyone, and that's what makes you and your ideas better than everyone. That's the one thing I never understood about Christianity. Like the first question should be like, bro, you wouldn't believe me. Like if I was like talking to a girl, and I would say, hey, God just told me to tell you to suck my dick. I've been inspired by God to tell you that he wants you to suck my dick. You wouldn't believe me, right? But then most people would believe that, when you ask who wrote the Bible, wasn't it man? Oh, but it was man inspired by God. Who the fuck believes that shit? Like, how do you really? It's just unreasonable. It's nonsensical. And that's the problem with reason. You just escape from the fallacies of the world. But you never really lose your wedding, like you never lose your true allegiance to the ideology of trying to make it good for everyone. Like, no, we can make it good for everyone to be a good little bitch, everyone to be amicable. We don't need conflict. We don't need any of this shit anymore. A world with no suffering, and even though suffering is what makes humanity, even though suffering is what makes you different from everyone. But that's why they want to abolish suffering. And abolishing suffering will in itself be the abolition of man, the destruction of man. Without suffering, where would we be? We wouldn't be where we are today without great suffering, great strife. So, yeah, he's awesome. He really is a great writer, and how he talks about, I'm sorry that I'm diverging so much and I'm going off on different tangents. But when he talks about creating ideology and being, he also talks about being honest, being honest being our true virtue, the virtue that we seek out most. To be totally honest with oneself, not to seek repose, not to, when our honesty wants to lay down, and like as he says, like, no, we remain as the last hard stoics. We keep going, even when it becomes uncomfortable. To be honest with oneself, not to create these fallacies, these philosophies as a way to lie to oneself, to put a veil over oneself, but to be really in depth with reality and see it for what it is and taking it as it is, not denying life, but accepting life for what it is and try to handle it as much as you can, right? How much can you digest? And that's why you constantly talk about the soul as a stomach, right? Like, your strength is how much truth can you digest, like how much bullshit do you need in your life to make it all work, to make it go down. How much watering down do you need to make it go through your stomach? It's quite but being honest with oneself is really a very difficult thing to do, right? We need lies more than we need truths. And these are very pivotal convictions to destroy, and very difficult convictions to destroy, of course. So, well, I'll leave you guys with that for today. It is hard. So I hope y'all make amazing games if y'all haven't already. Hope y'all have a great day. Love y'all. Till next time, peace.